I'd like to call this meeting of the Select Board to order on January 29th, 2025 at 4 o'clock. Additions and deletions to the agenda,
There are none.
citizens' comments.
Not seeing any in the room.
Okay. First item is the first class liquor license for Pentangle.
So Susan Ford did reach out to me about ensuring there is the proper insurance. So we talked to the LCT. Pentangle's working on getting the correct insurance to make sure the liability is not with the municipality, but with Pentangle if anything happens to the liquor license. They also sent us a document that we'll fill out that they advise any government that is kind of alcohol being served at events to have that signed by both the tenants and the government. So we'll do that as well to protect the town going forward.
Okay. Do we want to make a motion with those two conditions? Susan, you're muted.
I'll make a motion again with the proviso that we can't really review the application since the state doesn't no longer gives us access to all the information, but that we approve it subject to Pentangle ensuring that either they've provided the appropriate insurance for the municipality as the landlord or have otherwise protected us from liability. The statutes are pretty clear that a landlord can be sued if there's an issue with a liquor license.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Town meeting, signing of the town meeting warning.
Yep. So this needs to be signed and posted by tomorrow. The original goal of this whole meeting was to have the select board sign it today, so we posted tomorrow. Obviously, due to some weather concerns, the board's all remote. So you should have gotten an email from Patricia within the last half an hour for a DocuSign for the warning. So if the board has no desired changes to the warning, that can be signed and posted tomorrow morning. But if there are any changes, let me know. I'm happy to make updates and send it back to you sometime this evening.
I'm fine with it.
I have no changes.
Okay. So I'd like to motion to accept the FY26 town meeting warning.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I would like to add that we should be scheduling some meetings or doing something for to talk to people ahead of time, especially on a couple of the articles.
Yeah, I agree. We can probably do that offline. Next up is the housing coordinator contract.
Jill Davies and John Spector are both here, but I believe the board heard from them as well last week, or well, when the last meeting was, and the board wanted some more time to consider their options. So that's kind of where we're at.
So the decision is not just the housing, she's a housing advisor contract. It's also the legal and advertising costs as well. That's what's making up the 52,000.
And that's how we budgeted for that past. That's where we put the administrative expense.
Okay. I lost my page. We still don't know what funds are definitely encumbered. There's a lot of grants that are still active that have funds available.
Excuse me, you do know what funds are unencumbered. I told you $200,000.
He's talking about the non-housing grants.
Yeah, but even is it $200,000? You have $200,000 worth of. I know it's encumbered as a grant, but it's not encumbered to pay somebody to do an ADU or rental apartment, correct?
Those, we're calling those committed funds, and those.
No,
are-
there's a difference between committed and incumbent. Committed is to the grantee.
Right. And those,
Incumbent is what has been promised to the people.
so the 200,000 does not include any committed funds.
Sorry, Ray, the definition, Ray, we use the definition in the opposite way. We
Okay,
say encumbered means that it was granted, the select board and the EDC recommended the select board approve that the money be spent on incentives for ADUs or whatever. We call that encumbered.
okay,
And when someone applies and says, and they decide to give them $10,000, then it's committed. They might not, they don't write a check that day, so it's committed. So it might-
committed, okay,
Well,
that's fine.
We put the money aside and we don't ever count it again. So there's $200,000 that hasn't been promised to anybody.
Right.
Okay,
Except to housing.
in housing. And then Ray, I sent you and Laura an updated number. So I called it available for you, so you could say not encumbered or committed. That has nothing to do with housing on top, separately from the 200,000, which is, I want to say, as much as 210,000. There's a couple of there's one big grant in there for 25,000, which was, if you remember, the school district asked for a fundraising person in order to raise funds
right,
for and they have not drawn that grant down, and I assume it's because the world changed. So, because that was just before the vote for the school. So it's somewhere between 185 and 210,000, depending on if you count there. That 25,000, the 211 counts it. So just say there's another $200,000 that is encumbered and it's committed, but it looks like we can recapture it because the grants have finished, the time has expired, or and so forth. Non-housing.
I don't see $200,000 that,
You see more or less?
I see less.
Right. So there's 13,000 there's 13,000 in EDC administration, which we spend almost nothing of it, and when we don't meet, we spend nothing.
Right,
There's $17,000 in storefront incentives that haven't been drawn down, but there's approximately a $4,000 request in the pipeline, but not showing up in the report. So that's another 13. So that's 26,000. Then there's the 25,000 I mentioned, that's 50,000. And then there's,
well, that's all right, John.
there's also revenue that hasn't been, we have slightly more revenue than we've given in grants. So that money is completely uncommitted. So I think you could use 200 as or 175 to 200 as a rough estimate.
Okay, what I would like to see is these open grants that are still active, anything that can be closed.
If you're looking at something that's more than 2 hours old, that has been done to my best of my ability, and I will review it with you so that you can get an exact number.
Okay, that's fine. So I think I'm willing to extend the, can we talk about the marketing? Because it's not on the agenda.
So Ray, I think earlier, the marketing actually, I believe, is contracted to the end of April. So I think there's more time there before the board has to make a decision on extending that.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so I guess what I'm looking for is how is yours again, John? Committed. I don't see where we can. First of all, I think the program hasn't been as successful as we had hoped, and I think the funds that you have currently, anything that's already in the pipeline should obviously stay in the pipeline, but I'm not so sure we need to add money to this, add funds.
You mean add new money or
Add new money.
So can we reallocate the 200,000 that's already encumbered to housing?
Well, what else were you gonna do with it?
Well, we can't take it until we give your permission. You have to give your permission for that. So is that what you're saying? That we can reallocate that money
Reallocate to where?
to continue the housing advisor, the legal and advising to keep these programs going
Well,
until
the
till we get
housing
to
advisor, I I think the housing advisor we need to look at better. I don't know if we need to spend all that much money on the housing advisor because we're gonna start. We're not expanding the grand list with any of these ADUs and rentals, and we need to start looking at the big picture. And I think we need to start looking at the big picture sooner than later.
I
That's my
agree.
opinion.
I agree. And I
Anyone
don't,
else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think the easiest, well, not easiest. I think what we could do right now is something I would be willing to do is extend Trina's contract to the end of this fiscal year, so through June, and revisit it again. I think something that I certainly want to spend more time with is seeing if we can't be more effective in making an impact with housing funds in the form of an economic development director, someone who can explore relationships with developers and bringing more housing, building housing specifically to Woodstock. I think that these programs have been successful to a certain extent, 14 units, as you guys said in the last meeting, which is good. But I think there might be a way to have more impact. And I don't know that the housing advisor position is it, or if we expand that to something greater. And I don't want to abruptly end Trina's work. I know that you guys have a lot of inquiries into the programs right now for the ADUs and the conversions, and so I would like to see where those go. But to Ray's point, I think like spending the money to expand the grand list is where I would like to see the funding go.
didn't I respond yet, or do you want some more people to?
I don't know if the board has any other comments.
Susan?
I think I share the concern that it might be time to pause and reevaluate where this is going. I'm totally confused about the numbers everybody's been flying around. So if there are some financial documents, it would be great if the whole select board would get them rather than part of them. So I think I agree with the proposal Laura has made, or I do agree.
So in that period to June, do you want us to, are you suggesting not creating any new contracts with anybody and putting everything on pause?
New contracts to use the housing incentives?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we currently are talking to 4 people about different programs. Do you want us to say stop?
No, I think my opinion would be if you've got 4 people you're speaking to at this point, I would continue, but I wouldn't. I would not entertain other people coming forward. That's my opinion.
So one big picture, I don't disagree with anything that you said, but I really think we need to be doing this and all the other ideas you've got. 14 units is 14 units more than 0. And to put something that has worked to a limited extent on pause is just taking time. It's going to take time to recruit somebody. And why would you not carry on with something that has had some success? We've also presented a plan that says how Trina can be using her time to make development easier here as well, though there's a lot of red tape. So there's really no point talking to big developers yet because there's so many things you've got to sort out, like property tax rebates and all of those things. She can be working on those right now.
I mean, I don't think anybody's suggesting that we end those programs. I think we're saying we want her to extend her contract to the end of the fiscal year, revisit it. I think the onus is on the board to come up with a different alternative to do alongside and a parallel work plan to do alongside. If we extend her work, and we see some more success with that, or if we want to, again, expand that into a different solution.
So with respect, I think you're making a mistake if you go with the end of June. It's only 4 months away. And to expect somebody, we'd have to ask her if she's prepared to even talk about a 4-month contract.
Well, John's indicated over email that she is.
No.
We
no,
said 6.
I indicated that they would both marketing and, yes, it was 6 months, sorry.
6 months, yeah. Well, I think right now as of last week, there's about $15,000 in the Housing Advisors grant.
No, there's not.
What?
There's 1 month's pay left.
No.
I don't know what numbers you're looking at, Ray, so it's difficult.
I mean, I
So
think
there's-
that's kind of the foundational problem, is that we don't have
right.
like an accurate financial picture right now of what is encumbered and unencumbered in the fund. John has sent numbers to just Ray and I think that, and the EDC website has only been updated as of 2 hours ago, and we also saw numbers in last week's presentation, and you're asking us to make a decision on finances going into the future without a full picture.
So I'm asking you to make a decision about the housing advisor, and I know exactly what money is around for housing. I don't know about the rest of the Economic Reserve Fund. And I'm asking you to make a decision to be fair to a person whose contract ends in a couple of weeks. And if you don't want her services, fine, say so. If you do want her services, be fair to an individual.
I don't think my proposal is unfair to an individual, knowing that our board also is representing, the interests of the town here, Jill. Like, it's not about not being fair to Trina. It's about whether or not we believe in investing in these programs. And so I appreciate that that's just what is encumbered to housing, but I think it also helps the board to understand what is in what's encumbered in the entire fund as we look to match and work within the priorities that we've set. But maybe other people on the board have other ideas.
So for instance, Jill, you've got 4 people in the pipeline. What's that how much is that in dollars?
You can't say yet because nothing is in cement until it's in cement. So I don't know the answer. There's one person talking to us about a house that's possibly 5 separate bedrooms. That's different numbers. There's one person talking to us who might commit, he might withdraw. You don't count on anything until it's contracted.
Okay.
There is I think an important subtlety. I just want to come back, Laura, to your comment about increasing the grand list and not taking on new applicants, let's say, but continuing with the applicants that we have, and obviously continuing with the programs where we've already granted funds. Everyone agrees we don't want to lose those units. Some of the housing incentive programs that we have now increase the grant list, not all of them.
Three ADUs have.
Correct. Yeah. So for example,
Yes, but we're also pairing that with the knowledge that we're also asking for tax abatement on those ADUs at some point in the future.
Right, which is one of the things that if you go to any major developer, they're going to ask you for immediately. So
I
really,
understand it's a scale thing for me, and I think I think the issue is scale. I think adding is adding, and I love these programs and I've loved what they've been doing. I'm simply asking the board to consider an option in which we scale this to be larger.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, Laura. Maybe it sounded like my comment maybe led to a discussion in not the direction that I intended. Just going back, Ray, to your comment about not taking on new applicants, would you want to differentiate between taking on new applicants for ADUs, although there haven't been any very recently, because those do the grand list at a low cost per unit. You're not going to, whether you scale this program or not, you won't be able to incent a developer for $10,000 a unit to build another unit of housing. I can tell you that. You can agree or disagree. But anyway, my point was to suggest that perhaps if we are going to, that it might make sense during 4 or 6 month period to accept new applications for ADUs at a minimum, because those do expand the ground list. That was my only point, at a low cost. But it's a small point, and it doesn't help scale anything. So I
just think you have to do and right now. There are developers are not knocking on our doors, so let's keep going with the small programs as well as get it right for bigger developers.
I'm fine with that. I don't think we need to stop talking to applicants. I think we can continue talking to applicants. I think that it's imperative that we find a parallel path to expand what we're talking about and keep these other programs alive if they continue to be successful. But I think there's a world in which we can do all of these things that we're talking about. It's just a matter of recalibrating. I don't think we need to hang it up on a housing advisor, and I don't think we need to hang it up on a time frame. I think we can do these things in parallel.
Anyone else?
I just want to urge you not to, I mean, it's really difficult to be part of this conversation when you haven't received materials, and it's frustrating. So.
Well, you're speaking to your fellow board members there, because I don't have the materials you're talking about.
And okay, yeah, sorry. Let me just speak up to that regard. I'm the only one that has the details. Let's just start with the fact that that's completely inappropriate. I don't know. I only created a system for having the details because there was none. And it's not anyone's fault here on the management team. This predates them. So, however, I suppose that creates an obligation on my part. So I apologize for not having the information and not having it to everybody. If I presume you're asking me to give it to you. So I will get it and brief how.
Well, I mean, we've talked before about things being provided before a meeting so that they're also part of the public record, which is the way it should be handled.
Okay, well,
So my suggestion.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing. Susan, I respect that. I completely agree. And I completely agree. I would like to ask the select board now to stop relying on me for the numbers. This is ridiculous. Why am I doing the accounting for a municipal program?
And I would also like to say you've had a week to consider, and it would be really helpful to us. Give us the questions, and we can prepare the answers and then share the answers.
But however, to this point, Susan, the history is that I've been providing the numbers. Fair enough. Tell me when how. I'll get you the numbers as soon as I can. I'll get you the numbers within a day or two, and I think you'll probably. Based on this conversation, I think there'll probably be a need to have a discussion so that the numbers are understandable into the different buckets, the categories. And I'm happy to spend the time whenever you tell me you want to spend the time to share, to explain it, to make sure everyone understands. And I'm sorry, I do apologize. I'm frustrated that I have to be doing the work, but however, that doesn't make it any easier for you or anyone else who doesn't have the numbers. So anyway.
Well, I think you're in the position to know what grants. I mean, I don't know how we keep track of the grants that have been fulfilled, the grants that haven't been fulfilled, the promises, what's outstanding as far as ADU payments. I don't think that's something that Robert has. So
it is not correct. That's what's inappropriate.
Okay.
So if I could just interrupt for a second, I think in front of the board is the question of whether or not to continue the contract for the housing coordinator. And I think that's what the board should look at. If you need more information, numbers, I think Jill or John could provide them. If you are ready to make a vote, I think you can. I'll give more questions for Jill. We should ask them.
I say we can. I'll look for a motion to extend the housing advisor for 6 months.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ray, could you or Eric, whoever, could someone give me some guidance, not right now, about how and when you would like me to give the numbers and also make them more accessible on an ongoing basis.
I can talk to you about that, John.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is the Pomfret ambulance bill.
Yeah, so similar to the housing coordinator last week, the select board heard from Ben Brickner, who I believe is the chair of the Pomfret Select Board, over a ambulance bill that is significantly larger. And then in years past, they were asking for either a payment schedule or an abatement. I asked them for more information over the week, and so it's the select board's decision to do nothing at all or to do something. Their ask in a little more detail was either a 25% abatement on the gross invoice amount, or a payment in two installments, one in around July 2025, another one in July 2026. So that's what they suggested, but again, it's up to the select board to decide how you want to proceed and if you want to do anything at all.
I would suggest a payment plan. I think if we go down and start giving discounts, we're going down a slippery slope. And then everyone's going to want that. I think work out a payment plan with them.
I'm struggling to find the email, but I thought they were asking for 25% and a 2-year payment plan. But I agree with Ray that I would be more in favor of a payment plan and not a forgiveness of any of the amounts. And if I'm right and it was 25 and 2 years, I would suggest we give them maybe 3 years just to help out. My understanding is this amount does not affect our budget. Is that right?
Yeah, so I read the email as two separate ones, either a 25% abatement or a payment plan. They offered a payment plan in 2 years. Select board can obviously offer 3 if you want to, but I feel if they're willing to do 2, I'd rather get the money in sooner rather than later. Especially with Pomfret without a town administrator, the responsibilities shift between the chair, so it might be easy to get it quicker than to wait. But
I'm also fine with the payment plan. I think I know we've talked about regionalization and how important it is for us, so I hate to sour the relationship, but we also need to pay bills.
Yeah, we talked about this when we were coming up with the ambulance schedule. If it's, we don't really require people to pay it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
But a 3-year payment plan makes sense to me.
I would suggest, Eric, that any 2 or 3 year payment plan, if you want to work it out with them, I think I'm fine with that. I don't know about the other board members.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I would make a motion to have Eric work out a payment plan with the town of Pomfret for their outstanding ambulance bills, whether it's 2 or 3 year
So
payment
moved.
plan. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. The water ordinance.
yep, so this is again another time sensitive thing. So Stephanie's kind of been working around the clock, and she is in the room if you have specific questions on the ordinance. But we've sent you, I think, the latest draft this morning, and you've seen a few other copies of it. We do have to schedule a vote sooner rather than later, ideally Friday at the latest, if we could schedule a time for that, if people are ready to vote on the ordinance, with the assumption that we should be closing on the aqueduct at the end of March, which will give us kind of the 60 days or close to it to have the ordinance in effect by the time we take ownership or have a few days lag. So that's a hope of it, of that. The one thing I did mention in the email is the language right now has the town owning the pipes up to the curb stop. The way it's currently structured for our sewer and also, or no, I don't want to say the way it's currently structured for the aqueduct is you only own the main pipe. So in a scenario where a pipe is on one side of the street and the connection goes across the street, then to the residents, if that pipe has an issue, the aqueduct does not have any liability to fix it, where in this case, with the liability to fix it would be on the town. I think Ray can speak to why he prefers a curb stop, but I just want to kind of flag that for the board before we go forward.
Yeah, I think the town owning the curb stop, up to the curb stop, it makes sense, for a couple reasons. My shut off is in my yard, and I think that thinking outside the box and anything that could go wrong, if I didn't want to pay my water bill, you can't shut off my water, or I could just pour some concrete or dirt into the shut off and you'd never be able to turn off the water. Most municipalities that I know of, and not many, I don't know a lot about Vermont, but the town owns the curb stops. I just think, it may be a bigger expense at some point, but if we replace the main line, are we going and, do we force the homeowner to put in a new curb stop and run a line into the main line? It's going to make construction a nightmare if we ever put in a new main line. I think if we do it and we just do it to the curb stop and they own the other side, makes the most sense.
I can add, I don't know much about this, but I talked to Greg earlier. He can't be here because obviously it's a busy work day for him, but he also felt we should own the curb stops. And I think he knows a little more than I do, maybe a lot.
Yeah,
Laura, Kerry?
I'm fine with this. I think it makes sense.
Kerry?
I agree. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Are
Right.
there any other comments on the ordinance that the board wants to take up before we schedule a vote?
I'm fine with that information.
Okay, so we did pass it on to an attorney to review. They're hoping to get it to us by Friday. If they get it to us ahead of time before the vote, and there's any significant changes, we can postpone the vote. But also, as I said, I think to Ray before, we need something in effect that minimizes liability once we take ownership of the aqueduct. So this is an ordinance that will be updated, probably sooner rather than later. So it's good to have something on the books. So is there a time that works this Friday for 3 members for a quick 5-minute meeting to approve the ordinance?
I can do anything up till 12:30.
I'm available most of the day.
I'm not free in the morning, so I could come after 1:30, which sounds like exclusive of Ray. So you can exclude me.
Well, I could do,
Friday
need
is not
someone
great
else.
for me.
So something up in the Whites outside, I think.
Unless
I
I could come, I could come at 8.
We can't do 8 a.m. because we can't warn it in time by tomorrow morning. Ray, are you free late in the afternoon at all?
yeah, I can do, I could do 4 o'clock.
Does that work for 2 other people?
That's fine with me.
I could do that.
Okay.
We can
So
we could just Zoom if it's a 5-minute thing, right?
Yes.
If it's 4 o'clock, I could probably it's just right at Ski Runner's pickup, but I can call in if I can call in.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Yo.
All right, so that takes care of the water ordinance. Eric, do we have to go into executive session for anything?
We can wait until Friday. Nothing's pressing. I don't
Okay.
know if, I mean, we can, it's just really difficult for review on Zoom.
Okay, then why don't we, unless it's something pressing, we can put that off?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay. Next up is approval of the minutes.
I requested one change, which I believe has been made, for the January 21st minutes. I requested that we add that if all the special, warrants pass, it will increase the tax rate by 4%. I wanted to make sure that was in our minutes.
Okay,
So with that addition, I would move approval of November 19th, 24, December 17th, 24, December 30th, 24, January 7th, January 13th, and January 21st of 2025.
is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Before we go, I think Ben Brickman just popped on. Ben, are you there?